Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something I think a lot of us can relate to. Test anxiety in school kids.
Oh, yeah, definitely a topic that hits close to home for many.
We've got a pretty interesting mix of sources for this deep dive, actually. Articles from those parenting magazines, educational organizations,
Right, right.
advice from, psychologists and people in the education field,
hmm
and even, believe it or not, some tips from people who've taken a lot of tests.
Oh, wow, that's great. Like seasoned test takers.
Exactly. And even if you're, way past your school days, I think there's something here for anyone who's ever felt that pressure in a tough situation.
No, absolutely. Test anxiety doesn't just vanish when you get that diploma.
Right.
The things we'll be talking about today, those strategies, they're useful in all kinds of
Oh,
situations.
yeah, for sure. Like job interviews or having to speak in public.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so before we jump into the actual techniques, one thing that really stuck out to me from all these sources was this idea of perspective. It's almost like before we even give kids the tools, we need to help them see that tests aren't the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, it's about changing how they view tests.
Mm.
Instead of thinking of them as like these huge events that determine their entire future,
Right.
we want to encourage them to think of them more as like opportunities to learn and grow.
I like that. It's about moving away from that fear of failing and
Yeah,
toward, like, a more growth mindset.
exactly. Yeah.
Several articles mention this interesting exercise, having the child list out their past worries
Okay.
to kind of show how often those worries either didn't happen at all
Right.
or they weren't as bad as they thought they would be.
That's such a great way to help kids see their anxieties in a more realistic light. It's like taking stock of your worries and then looking back to see what actually happened. A lot of times, those worst case scenarios, they never even come true.
Right. And even when things don't go perfectly, it's rarely ever the catastrophe we thought it would be.
Yeah, totally.
It's about building that ability to bounce back, resilience,
Yeah.
and realizing setbacks are just part of life.
Definitely. A crucial skill. One of the main things we see here is that putting too much emphasis on tests can actually make anxiety worse. If we keep telling kids that one test score is going to determine their future, of course they're going to feel tons of pressure.
Makes sense. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. The science behind test anxiety.
Okay.
So these sources talk about how stress hormones, especially adrenaline,
Mm-hmm.
can actually block clear thinking.
Right.
Have you ever had that experience where you studied the material, but then you sit down for the test and your mind just goes blank?
Oh, absolutely. It's like your brain just shuts off. And it's not because you didn't learn the material, it's that stress response taking over.
Oh, wow.
When we're under pressure, our bodies release adrenaline. It's supposed to help us deal with danger. But during a test, that rush of adrenaline can actually mess with the parts of the brain we need for memory and thinking clearly.
That's like our bodies are working against us in those high-pressure moments. Like our fight or flight response kicks in when we really need to be calm and focused.
Exactly. And that's why understanding that physical side of test anxiety is so important. It helps us see that those feelings of panic and overwhelm, they aren't a sign of weakness or lack of intelligence.
Yeah.
They're just a natural reaction to stress.
Mhm.
And with the right tools and strategies, we can learn to manage them better.
Speaking of tools and strategies, let's get into some of that practical advice from the sources.
Yeah, let's do it.
They seem to break it down into these three main stages, like before the test, during the test, and then looking for extra support.
Okay, sounds good.
So let's start with that before the test phase. Preparation seems to be key.
Oh, preparation is absolutely essential. And it's not just about studying the material, it's about building that foundation of confidence, self-assurance, so that kids can walk into that test feeling calm and ready.
So it's not just about cramming info into their heads. It's about giving them the skills and strategies to handle the test itself.
Exactly. One of the most common recommendations across the sources is the importance of good study habits and time management. When kids feel confident in what they know, that confidence helps lower anxiety.
Yeah, it's like having a secret weapon.
Yes.
A deep understanding of the material so they feel in control. One source even suggested recreating the test environment when they practice.
That's a great idea to help reduce the feeling of everything being new and unfamiliar on test day.
Yeah.
By practicing in a similar setting with similar time limits, kids can get used to how it looks and feels, like the sights, sounds, the whole atmosphere. It's about taking away those surprises that can contribute to anxiety.
Now, this next one really caught my eye. Visualization. I've heard about athletes using mental rehearsal to improve their performance.
Right.
But how does that work with taking tests?
Visualization is a powerful tool for handling anxiety and boosting confidence. It's about creating a mental picture of yourself succeeding on the test. Imagine walking into the room feeling calm, prepared.
Okay.
You read the instructions carefully, work through each question with focus,
Mm-hmm.
and in the end, you finish the test with a sense of accomplishment.
Well, it's like you're pre-programming your brain for success by picturing a positive outcome.
Precisely. And the more you practice visualizing, the more you strengthen those neural pathways linked to feeling calm and confident. It's like creating a mental roadmap for success that you can use on test day.
That's fascinating.
And don't forget about sleep.
Oh, right, sleep.
Mhm.
I used to pull all-nighters before big exams, but these sources really stress how important it is to get enough rest.
Sleep is so important for your brain to function at its best, especially for learning and remembering things.
Yeah.
When we don't sleep enough, our cognitive abilities suffer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And we're more likely to feel stressed and anxious.
It's like trying to run a marathon without eating anything. You might push through for a bit, but you're going to crash eventually.
Exactly. And that's why cramming is so counterproductive.
Okay.
It might feel like you're stuffing more info into your brain, but without enough sleep, your brain won't process and store that info effectively.
So the key takeaway here is that rest and relaxation are just as important as hitting the books. It's about finding that balance between focused studying and giving your brain the downtime it needs to recharge and actually absorb what you've learned.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about getting ready for the test and having the right mindset.
Yeah, setting the stage, so to speak.
Exactly. But now let's get into those in-the-moment strategies. How to manage that anxiety right there during the test.
Okay, yeah, that's what I really struggle with even now, those feelings of panic when you're actually in the thick of it.
Right, it's tough.
The sources had some interesting ideas, though. One that stuck out was brain dumping. Sounds kind of intense, right?
It does, doesn't it? But it's actually really simple and effective. Basically, you take a few minutes at the start of the test, and you just jot down any key info, formulas, concepts that you've memorized.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a cheat sheet, but it's allowed.
Exactly. It's totally legit. And writing it down can really help clear your mind.
Oh, I see.
It's like you're offloading some of that info from your short-term memory, so you can focus better on the actual questions.
Like freeing up space in your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Several sources also talked about like previewing the test before you dive in, budgeting your time for each section, tackling the easier questions first to build up some confidence.
Classic test-taking strategies, but they can make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
By previewing the test, you get a feel for the structure, the types of questions, how much each section is worth.
Oh, okay.
It lets you plan out your time better.
It's like having a game plan.
Exactly. You know what to expect and how to approach each challenge. And by starting with those easier questions, you build a momentum. You start feeling good about yourself, which can help lower your anxiety and boost your confidence for the tougher ones.
Okay, so what about those harder questions? Should you just skip them if you're feeling stuck?
Skipping can be a good strategy if you're spending too much time on one question, but the key is to flag it and come back later. Sometimes seeing it with fresh eyes can help you figure it out.
It's like when you're writing and hit a wall.
Exactly. Sometimes you need to step away and come back with a fresh perspective. And when you do go back, make sure you read the question carefully, break it down, think about all the possible answers before you choose.
Now, this one I thought was interesting. Moving around, stretching during the test. I remember feeling so tense during exams, but I doubt my teachers would have let me do jumping jacks.
Probably not.
Yep.
But even small movements and stretches can be really helpful to release tension and improve focus. Just little things, rolling your shoulders, gently turning your neck, stretching your fingers.
Right.
It helps get your blood flowing, loosens up those tight muscles.
Okay, so not about disrupting everyone, just finding subtle ways to relieve that physical tension.
Exactly. Now, one of the most powerful techniques for managing anxiety, both during a test and in life generally, is deep breathing.
Deep breathing. I hear so much about that, but I've never really understood how it works.
It's actually fascinating. When we're stressed, we tend to take short, quick breaths,
Right.
which actually triggers more stress hormones. But when we slow down our breathing, especially using our diaphragm, we activate something called the vagus nerve.
Vagus nerve, okay.
This nerve is super important for calming down that fight or flight response and helping our body relax.
So by controlling our breath, we can actually tell our brain and body, hey, it's okay to chill out.
Exactly. And the great thing is, it's something kids can do anytime, anywhere.
Right.
Encourage them to practice before the test and use it during the test whenever they start feeling anxious.
It's like a built-in stress reliever.
Exactly. We've covered a lot. Brain dumping, deep breathing, strategic test taking. But what if a child is still struggling, even with all these tools? What other kinds of support can we offer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, what happens when it's more than just needing a few tips?
That's where having open communication and a good support network comes in.
Okay.
Encourage kids to talk about their feelings and anxieties with their parents, teachers, school counselors. Those trusted adults can offer reassurance, guidance, and connect them with resources like support groups or workshops on study skills.
It's about creating that safe space where they feel comfortable sharing their fears without being judged.
Absolutely. And for some kids, test anxiety might be a sign of something bigger, like a learning disability or an anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
In those cases, it's crucial to get a professional evaluation.
Right, to figure out what's really going on.
Exactly. And speaking of support, there are specific accommodations that can be super helpful for students with test anxiety. Things like extra time, breaks during the test, maybe even taking the test in a quieter room.
So it's about leveling the playing field, making sure everyone has a fair chance to show what they know.
Exactly. And remember, these accommodations aren't about giving anyone an advantage. They're about removing obstacles, making sure every student has the opportunity to do their best.
Okay, so we've talked about preparation, strategies during the test, and getting extra support. But what about the emotional side of things? How can parents and teachers help kids develop a more positive attitude about tests?
That's where encouragement and positive reinforcement come in.
Okay.
It's about celebrating effort and progress, not just the grade.
Shifting the focus from being afraid to fail to the excitement of learning and growing.
Exactly. When kids feel supported and encouraged, it can make a world of difference in how confident they feel and how they approach learning overall. It's about fostering that growth mindset, where challenges are seen as opportunities to learn and get better.
Yeah, I love that. Another thing several sources mentioned was open communication, letting kids talk about their feelings, acknowledging their worries, reassuring them that it's okay to feel nervous.
It's about normalizing those feelings,
Right.
letting kids know they're not alone in this. We all get anxious sometimes, and it's important to teach kids healthy ways to cope.
Like giving them permission to be human.
Absolutely.
We all experience stress and anxiety, and it's better to acknowledge those feelings instead of pretending they don't exist.
Exactly. And by creating a safe space for kids to express themselves, we can help them develop those healthy coping mechanisms and build their resilience.
Now, something I think a lot of parents might wonder about, medication.
Mm.
Is that ever necessary or appropriate for test anxiety?
That's a tough question, and it's really best left to healthcare professionals.
Okay.
While medication can help in some cases, it's not usually the first thing we try for test anxiety.
Right. It's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Exactly. There are often more effective and less intense approaches that can get to the root of the anxiety and teach kids long-lasting coping skills.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about exploring all the options.
And it's important to weigh the potential risks and benefits of medication and consider other options like therapy, lifestyle changes, and those strategies we've talked about.
Right, finding the right fit. So as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, I'm struck by how many different techniques and approaches are out there.
Yeah.
It's like a buffet of anxiety-busting strategies.
It is. And the encouraging thing is there's no one-size-fits-all solution. The key is to experiment, see what works best for each child, and create a toolbox of strategies for handling those stressful moments.
And for parents and educators out there, remember, you don't have to be anxiety experts to make a difference. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just listen, offer a kind word, and let them know you believe in them.
Perfectly said. Now, before we head into the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. What role do you think technology plays in either making test anxiety worse or better?
That's a good question. Especially now, when everything's so digital, technology seems like it can both help and hurt when it comes to anxiety.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a double-edged sword. Like, on the one hand, there are so many great tools for learning and staying connected, but on the other, it can be a source of distraction and pressure.
Oh, definitely.
Being constantly connected, the pressure to keep up with social media, that can really fuel anxiety, especially for young people. Imagine constantly being bombarded with information, notifications, and comparing yourself to others. It's no surprise anxiety levels are going up.
Yeah, it's like a constant stream of potential stressors right in their pockets.
Exactly. And then there's the pressure from online learning platforms, assignments, deadlines, all those performance metrics. It can feel overwhelming even for adults.
Right, right. But let's not forget, technology also has a lot of great resources for managing anxiety, like meditation apps, mindfulness exercises, even those virtual reality programs that can help you feel calmer and more focused.
Oh, yeah, those digital tools can be so helpful, especially for people who maybe can't access traditional therapy or prefer something they can do on their own. There's even research on biofeedback apps
Oh,
where you
okay.
can track your heart rate and breathing. They can be really good at reducing anxiety because they help you become more aware of your body's stress responses.
So it's like having a personal trainer, but for your nervous system.
Exactly. You learn to spot those early signs of anxiety
Right.
and develop techniques to calm your body and mind. But at the end of the day, technology is just a tool. It's how we use it that matters.
Yeah, that's so true.
It can be good or bad, depending on how we engage with it.
One of the sources talked about using touch to reduce anxiety, which I found really interesting.
Okay.
I love hugs, but I don't think that would fly in a testing environment.
Probably not, but it's more about understanding how touch affects us physically. Research shows that physical contact, even something as simple as holding a worry stone, can trigger the release of oxytocin.
Oxytocin, the cuddle hormone.
Exactly. It makes you feel connected and
Mm.
relaxed.
Yeah.
And it's not just the emotional comfort, it's the actual chemical changes in our brains. What's even more amazing is that even a stranger's touch can have an impact. One study found that people who held a stranger's hand while getting a mild electric shock felt less stressed compared to those who got the shock alone.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So even a little bit of human connection can make a big difference in how we handle stress. It's like having a built-in stress reliever.
Precisely. And while holding hands with a stranger during a test might not be practical, there are small, subtle ways kids can use touch to self-soothe,
Oh, okay.
like wearing a soft bracelet or carrying a smooth stone in their pocket.
It's like having those little rituals, those physical things that can ground you in the moment and quiet those racing thoughts.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important message for everyone listening. Test anxiety and anxiety in general is really about how much control we feel we have.
Mm.
When we feel overwhelmed or like things are spinning out of control, that's when anxiety spikes. But when we find those little things that help us feel more in control, whether it's deep breathing, positive self-talk, or even the feeling of touch, that's when we can start to manage those feelings better.
That's a great point. And even though all these strategies can be really helpful, it's also important to remember that there's no shame in seeking professional help if anxiety gets too intense or starts affecting your life in a big way. Therapists and counselors can offer personalized guidance, teach coping skills, and help you understand your own unique triggers.
Absolutely. It's like having a coach in your corner. They can guide you through those challenges and help you build the skills and confidence to face those tough situations head on.
So, to wrap up our deep dive into test anxiety, I hope we've given you some valuable insights and tools you can actually use.
Yeah, definitely.
Remember, test anxiety is common, but it doesn't have to rule your child's life. By fostering a growth mindset, giving them effective strategies, and being supportive and encouraging, you can empower them to approach tests with confidence and resilience.
And remember, these strategies are good for more than just tests.
Oh, yeah.
They're life skills that can help kids navigate all sorts of challenges. By teaching them to manage anxiety, you're giving them a gift that will last a lifetime.
So true. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful and encouraging. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the topics that matter to you.